And here we go. So thank you very much, Nakia, for being with us. We're here in the MEMBRE nation in a beautiful park. And we've been coming here to know more about the historical signification of the horse with the MEMBRE tribe. And would you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, for the Nez people, the horse has always been a very integral part of our culture and a part of our history, and indeed even pre-colonial times when the horse was introduced around 1680. Around here is when our people, there's a whole story of how that came to be amongst the Nez people. But even prior to that, going back archaeologically, there's a site about 60 miles to the south called Cooper's Ferry, we called Nepeha, and there was ancient remains of a Pleistocene horse that were found there. Obviously, they weren't used for riding, but that relationship of the origin of the horse was in North America. It wasn't in Asia or any of those places. They first developed here, and in fact, that village site, there are remnants of that Pleistocene horse. So that relationship goes back even longer beyond the colonial actions that happened that reintroduced the horse by the Spaniards back to North America. So that's a very ancient relationship. It's not something that started with Columbus and with those and those Spaniards that came after. That was an ancient relationship. So a lot of people don't understand that. About our people. And so when the horse came to be, it also foretold, the horse and other things were foretold in some of our prophecies about a change that was coming to this land and to our people. And so some of those changes, those signs that were going to be coming to us were different types of animals, different types and modes of transportation. And one of those that was going to be the sign when that change was going to happen was the horse. And so when the horse came, then our people knew, and they started to see other things that had come into our trade networks that before we seen the new person, the white-faced person, our people started to see some of the things and knew that that change was coming. So they began to prepare. And so when that horse came, it was a fulfillment of that prophecy, but it was also a recognition that there were going to be some of these things that were going to come into our lives that were going to enhance our lives, and the horse was one of them. But yet there were going to be others that, and some that even came before, the disease and many other things that had come and wiped out scores of our people that were going to be something that were going to endanger our lives, endanger the life of our people and our relationship here on this landscape. And so the horse has a very long connection to us. And as our people became mounted and began to travel, this area that you are in, unlike I think in people's romanticized views, they think the plains is horse country. This is horse country, not the plains. Because in the early times, when the horse came here, in the wintertime, these valleys are very well protected from the winter. Out in the plains, they don't have those areas. And so because of that, people, Nez people, some of the other plateau nations were able to amass tens of thousands of horses. And whereas in the plains, those horses would die in the wintertime because they were not only did they not have the proper shelter in these canyons stay relatively mild in the winter times, but they didn't have the proper feed. Like we have this type of grass that grows here that when it dries, it doesn't lay down in the first fall rains and in the years of high accumulation of snow, it stays up above the snow. And so the horses are continue to graze on that. Whereas in the plains, all their grass lays down. And so we had the perfect area to raise horses, and many of our chiefs that lived into like around the first treaty time, which was 1855, they were known Nez Perce chiefs, one man that owned 2,000 horses. And so our wealth was measured in the horse, and our sovereignty was increased because of the use of the horse. When the Northwest Fur Trade Company, Hudson Bay Company set up here, and they thought they were going to get the Nez Perce people to trap for them, to trap beaver like they did to the east. We would not trap for them. We refused to be, for us, we didn't want to be made slaves by them. And so, but the things that we wanted and that we could use from their, you know, the trade goods that they had, we simply traded the horses for those things that we need. So it increased the strength and the ability not only for our people to move on the landscape, but our economic viability was high. We were one of the richest tribes because of the tens of thousands of horses our people had been able to acquire and maintain and to breed. And the use of selective breeding was practiced and was noted here amongst the Nez Perce and Plateau people before it was in any other tribe. So the technology also accompanied that ability for us to raise and to rear horses. And of course, you know, fast forward into 1877, that was one of the things that was seen as our power was the horse. And so it was targeted by the U.S. military as well as other tribes to take away that power and that sovereignty that was given to us by the use of the horse. And so along with that, even in this area right here, this was a gathering area that they would come and they would have their, we call telekleen. Telekleen means circling around. And in the old days of the horse and buffalo days, when the warriors would go out and they would fight another enemy tribe and they would come back successful, they would do this ceremony where they would ride 3 times around the camps. And that's where that term, that means like to, it means like the horse, a lope in a horse, and loping a horse in a circle. But during that time, if they were successful, they would also bring the horses that they had captured from an enemy tribe, or if they had defeated an enemy in battle and took something off of him, his headdress or some other part of his equipment, they would show that to the people. Or in the case that they had lost one of the warriors, then that's when the empty horse would be brought along. And that was a signature ceremony that our people would conduct. And it's still done today. It's often called a parade, but it has a very powerful meaning to us, because in years later, the regalia that our people use, the horse regalia, is passed down generation after generation. In my own family, I hold a lot of that horse regalia that's passed down for over 100 years. And when we adorn our horses with that regalia, we're also actively memorializing our ancestors. We're remembering our ancestors, and through the horse and through the regalia and through the connection to the horse. And so we have a series of songs too that we sing when we do those ceremonies. The returning from warriors, we call Créez on the horse, as well as other types of songs that we use that are associated with the use of the horse. And it still is the way in which we honor and we memorialize our ancestors using the horse. That's the proper way to do it.
Yeah, I've seen not only saddles, but they also had like masks. And is there a meaning to this? Is it something special? Is it to honor the horse, or what is the meaning of the regalia that were used?
Yeah, so the original regalia, the the collar that goes in the front, the soya ketsa'i, is the mask. In our language, the supports the saddle. The woman with the high cantle, high pummeled saddles, that was a woman's saddle. The sauyain, the decorative blanket that goes over the horse, like a saddle blanket, but usually they're really fancy. And so because the horse meant so much to the Nez Perce people, that any bit of wealth and finery, they would put it into that regalia. So seashells that were traded from the coast, when they got manufactured cloth, which was literally worth its weight in gold, and the beads that came later on, before that, quills, buckskin, though the best finery that we could muster was used as part of that horse regalia. And sometimes even the personal things from individuals of ancestors that had come would also be placed, or something that they had done in battle would also be also added to that regalia. There's a really famous picture that was taken here showing many of the warriors, and their horses were painted up with the different war deeds that they would do. And if a warrior had been in battle and his horse was shot from underneath him and he was able to survive, that was considered a war honor. And what they would do is they would, when they would do the telakleen ceremony, they would use red paint, and they would paint on the horse where that horse had been shot under. So you'd see a big red spot, and that signified that that not that specific horse, but another horse had been shot from underneath this warrior, and yet he was able to survive. And other things that they would mark on their horses, you know, to signify different war deeds that they had done in battle. And so, you know, the Nez Perce people were well-regarded warriors, and so a big part of that was the use of the horse, and because of that, they express their martial prowess, you know, through the use of the horse too. And a lot of that horse regalia, those masks were used only by the men, and certain things that were used, and even the women would sometimes display those things that the men had taken in battle. And that was, you know, part of the significance of what how they would express themselves with the horse, and what a lot of that regalia was representing. You'll see a lot of the regalia is done with red cloth later on, and red paint. That's to signify that those things were associated with something that somebody had done in battle, and that's why they use that color of red. In the same way, the men would paint themselves with red and paint their horses in the same manner.
Thank you very much, Nakia. And the Nez Perce tribe is very well known for the creation of the Appaloosa horse. And so what is the history of this special horse? Why was it created? And could you tell us a few words about this?
So there are several stories of how this came to be, and some might view those as contradictory stories, but I don't view it as such, simply because if you understand, the Nez Perce people lived over an area of about 19 million acres. And so obviously what happened on one side of the Nez Perce territory versus the other might vary a little bit. And so there's a couple different stories about these very well-known chiefs that had got some of these Appaloosas, these ones that had spots. The first mare that was acquired by the Nez Perce from tribes to the south was a white mare. But soon after that, they were able to acquire some of the spotted horses. And there is some, so our word for the Appaloosa is mommin. Mommin is the word that we reference the spotted Appaloosa horse. And some have surmised that may have originated from, you know, later on when they acquired more Appaloosa horses from the Mormons. So in the Nez Perce language, there's no R sound. So they wouldn't know how to pronounce, they wouldn't have the ability to pronounce Mormon. So they pronounce Mommin. And so some of that might have been later on, but prior to that, there was one story. There was a chief by the name of Mitat Waptis, means three feathers. And he acquired some of those spotted horses, and then they were bred specifically, not specifically for their color per se, but more for their endurance and their ability to traverse this land. And if you look around, we're in a relatively riverine sort of environment, but if you go up on top, there's mountains all the way around us. And so having a horse that have the ability, you go to Salmon River country, to traverse up and down a very precipitous landscape is really important. And a horse, as a horseman, probably yourself, that a horse has to be bred in order to traverse that landscape, because they get played out really fast. If they're just one horse that's bred to just run on the plains, that's one thing. But the horses here had to travel in a very, like if you go to the Hell's Canyon, there were horse trails there, and the Hell's Canyon is 1,000 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon. It's the deepest gorge in the United States, and so you're talking about very rough country that a horse has to be developed in such a way in order to traverse that country. And so I think the main thing was not as much the color of the animal. It was more of the ability of that animal to have long stamina, long wind, and be able to travel. The other part of it too was with Nez Perce people was we traveled long distances, even brief before we had the horse. But after the horse, we were able to travel to Montana, what is now Montana, the Dakotas, down to the mouth of the Columbia River, down into Northern California. We did that regularly, and because we traded, and the only way that you can do that is not by having one horse. You have to have a whole string of horses, as well as if you're packing trade material, you have to have even more horses. And so our people would, because of the horse, were able to traverse vast areas and trade. We regularly went from the Dalles, which is about probably 5 hours to the west, to the upper Missouri. And we were the only tribe that did that on a regular basis. And many of our people, including my family, lived almost exclusively out to the east of the Bitterroot Mountains, out into the plains area. And they went back and forth. And so those distances were not nothing to them, because they had so many horses, and they would travel and they would just switch off horses and be able to traverse those long distances and carry whatever goods they happen to be trading to the plains and then back to the plateau.
So you're saying it's more the ability of the horse to walk long distance than the spotted aspect of the horse. And in France, when we talk about the Appaloosa, everybody sees the spotted horse, white and black spots.
Mm-hmm.
And is this real? Is this has to be a spotted horse, or any color would?
No, and there's like an old saying, even out here in the West, that a good horse comes in any color. If it's a good horse, it don't matter what color it is. And I think those horses that they use for hunting and for war, those were very well-trained horses, but they were the best of the best horses that they could possibly muster. But if you were going to like parade and be kind of more flashy, obviously, you got an Appaloosa that throws a lot of color, is going to look good in a parade. And so they're good for that. But I think more so of just the spots, it's the other characteristics that the horse had. Their hooves were very adept at, because in that time they didn't shoe, our people didn't shoe the horses, so they had to really look out after the hooves of those animals. So their ability, their stamina, but also the strength of their hooves, their striped hooves of the Appaloosa, allows them to traverse these rocky areas with a lot of basalt around here. And so there were other attributes that the Appaloosa had that were also that went along with their coat pattern. And one of the big things that our old people said is the stamina. Those Appaloosas had very good stamina. So it may not be like a racing horse per se, or a horse you'd maybe hunt buffalo with necessarily, but when you're traveling across this landscape, they had the ability to travel up and down and maintain their stamina throughout that process.
Yes. Thank you very much. And maybe to close this interview, I heard that the tribe now is currently recreating another race of horse, the nurse purse horse. And what can you tell us a few words about that?
Yeah, that was a program that started, I believe, in the 1990s. It's kind of diminished down a little bit, but we still have remnant horses. Like some of the horses that I have and my brother have, they're crossed with the Akoteki, which is that horse that comes from Turkmenistan. And I think some of the idea there was, so in 1877, like a lot of people are familiar with Chief Joseph and a lot of our leading chiefs, Looking Glass, Whitebird, some of those leading men that were alive at that time, they had to move very abruptly out of these areas to the south. That was what is now Northeast Oregon, the Salmon River country just to the south of us. And so when they left a lot of their stock. They weren't able, it wasn't only horses, thousands of horses, but also they had cattle at that time. And again, after the war had ended, a lot of our horses had been taken. Some of the group that went to Canada only had a few horses. The group that went to and were exiled from 1878 to 1885 in Oklahoma, Indian Territory, all their horses were taken from them. So they had no horses. And so it really was a huge blow to us as a people. And then to further that, when this reservation was established in 1863, which basically was the kind of precursor to the 1877 war, and then it was further broken up through the Dawes Allotment Act. We don't have enough open spaces here that the horses need in order for them to, have enough area. It's not a free range reservation. And so, and a part of that, along what happened is, different breeds, in particular, thoroughbreds and other breeds that had come here much later started to be interbred with those original horses, which had a different character to them at that time. And so I think the thinking was that we had access to these Akotekis. There was a man that was working in the program here, made a connection to an individual that I think at that time there was only a few hundred of Akotekis in the United States because they were guarded. And so knowing that the Appaloosas that we had probably had a lot of intermixture of some of the newer breeds, that it might have changed the character. I think the thought at the time was that they would go to this Akoteki, which is one of the oldest breeds in the world, and to try to reintroduce some of those old genes back into the gene pool of the horses that were still here. And so that was really the, part of the idea of why they interbred the Akoteki back with the Appaloosa stock that we had here. And some of my horses are one of my main horse that I use in parades and riding is, I think he's half Akoteki. He might be a little less than half Akoteki, but they're more longer horses, more leaner horses, and they have certain characteristics that, like a kind of a lack of a foretop. They don't have a pronounced foretop, and then some of especially the ones with the buckskin or palomino, they have a metallic sheen to them as well. So they're really nice horses, and and again, it kind of also goes along with the stamina. They're really high stamina type of horses, and I can definitely verify that with my horse. He can go up a hill and he'll tire out, but then he'll snap right back not long after that. So they have really good stamina as well, which is obviously a big feature that's important to having a horse to travel long distances. But that program is not as prominent as it once was, but we still have a lot of the horses that are I think the last stud had died. He was a full Akoteki. He died, I don't know, it was more than 10 years ago he died, but there's still many of those horses that carry that Akoteki bloodline that we still have, including the horses that myself and my brother own as well. So
Well, thank you so much to share some of this knowledge about the horse, and we are eager to come here and to see the beautiful Nespers horse and the Appaloosa. And once again, Nakia, a big thank you for this interview.
Wait, do you have one last message for guests that may be wanting to come and visit the Mipu country and experience the Nespers horse?
Yeah, so we definitely want to reach out to some of our friends, you know, throughout the world, through France. And as I mentioned before, I have my own contacts that I have with people in France, and their, you know, their appreciation for the Nespers culture and the Nespers horse culture. And, you know, it's something that with the Chief Joseph Foundation that we're really trying to promote, because a lot of our youth have different interests that maybe are less culturally grounded, and the horse is a powerful learning tool and is a powerful animal, a sacred animal to us. And because if you look at our history going back, and this is something that I've always stated, is that the times in Nespers history, Nespers culture, where we were at our strongest and most powerful, is it just so happened we had the most horses. And so in order for us to enrich our lives as Nespers people, the horse has to be a part of it. And then with the horse a part of our lives, it'll enrich other aspects of our personal lives, of our the lives of our children, of our society as a whole, because those horses are powerful beings, and they bring healing, they bring good things to your people. Whenever, even if a lot of old people in different places, even if they no longer will be able to ride a horse or break horses, they still want a horse in their backyard because of the power of what those horses bring. And they bring good things to our homes and to our communities. And that's why we need to hold on to our horse culture as much as possible, because those horses have always brought good things to our people, as they do to all people. And I think that's what we share with other people that have horses and have that connection. For us, there's also a sacred component to that that is difficult to express in this format, but we want to have the ability to share that and to have that connection with people, not only here in North America, but in France and throughout the world. And we've had visitors that have come and partaken in that, and as much as we can share as appropriate, you know, it's a good opportunity for us. But also, I think what it does for our kids is it helps reinstill the importance of what the horse is to us, and that this is recognized not only just here in the Northwest, but, you know, throughout the world. And so to help encourage our kids of how important the horse is to us, and to share in that connection with other peoples from wherever they might be in the world. So, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that, and hopefully we can develop those points of interaction with maybe your group and yourself, as well as many others. And I think the horse will be a really really wonderful and beautiful way to express the basic humanity of us, and connecting to those animals, and how it's expressed through our culture. So we would definitely look to those opportunities to do that.
Okay, last thing. Can you give us your Indian name, what it means, first name, last name, what tribe you're from, and then your role with Chief Joseph Foundation? Yeah,
so my name is Nakia Williamson. My Indian name is Ipalik Hilam Kawat, and it's one of my family's names that goes back probably 6-7 generations. And he was one of the most well-regarded war captains and leaders of our people, because of his ability to have success and keep our people safe. And that name translates to one who gathers the clouds, but in history he's known as Pile of Clouds. And that's the name that was passed down, along with, for me, I have a headdress that belonged to him that goes with that name. And I'm here from the Nez Perce tribe, and I also work with the Chief Joseph Foundation. I'm on the board, and so I just try to help lend to some of our initiatives that we have with the youth, and try to ensure that what we do is culturally grounded in the ways in which our people understand the horse and the use of the horse, and how important that cultural connection via the horse is to our people, and trying to promote that with our children the best we can. We do that through a number of partnerships with the local rodeo association that I was served on that board for 7 years, and just trying to find people that have those same connections and understandings with the horse, you know. So that's really what I'm involved in.
Thank you very much for sharing with us and connecting with us with the power of that beautiful and mighty horse. Thank you very much, Nakia Williamson, for that.
Yep, you're welcome.